G'day everyone and welcome to the Big Bros Podcast, episode 61 today. My name is Jeremy and welcome if it's your first time joining us on the show. I'm joined by my lovely friend and co-host, Ilan. How you going, mate?
I'm pretty good, man. Just had a coffee, deleted that, and now I am, like a Duracell bunny. I'm ready to explode.
Duracell bunny. Well, let's dive into it because that kind of weaves us into this episode in a way in talking all about productivity, relying on a bit of caffeine. We want to make this a productive conversation as well. But with that being said, sometimes wanting to be too productive is detrimental. And I've noticed this in my life. I think you've noticed it in your life recently too. And let's talk about it because we currently live in a world today where we feel like we have a lot of self-help things jammed down our throat. We have productivity messages jammed down our throats constantly. And if you're not in a run club, if you're not doing your morning meditation and your yoga class and your breath work, and you're not doing your journaling at night, and you're not doing your 5 sessions during the week of training, and you're not doing your meal prep, and you're not doing your socializing with mates, on top of all of that, are you even a productive human? That's how we're made to feel now. At least that's how I feel like I'm kind of made to feel now. What do you reckon?
A lot of ways I do agree. I think a lot of people have developed an unhealthy relationship with productivity where there's a belief, as you said, that if you're not getting everything done, it's a indictment on their personality. So I think nowadays there's this massive craze obsession to do everything, but also to document it and to show everyone else how productive they've been. It's almost become a form of productivity porn, hasn't it?
It has become productivity porn. It's a nice way to think about it. It's the addiction to productivity and the belief that if you're not doing enough, if you're not ticking 10 boxes in your day, you're only ticking 5 boxes in your day, that's not good enough because someone out there is ticking those 10 boxes. So therefore you're 5 degrees of freedom and 5 degrees below them, which isn't good enough. How dare you not be ticking 10 boxes like everyone else?
Exactly. And the thing is, the whole discussion surrounding productivity, for me, it at least became a bit more prominent over the last few years, and obviously with studies, because I became quite obsessed with how to optimize my studying, how to become really efficient in what I'm doing. And then as we were researching this episode, I wanted to look at this whole notion of productivity porn and why so many people have developed such unhealthy relationships with productivity itself. And I had a look at some of the reasons and wanted to see if they were relatable in my life. I'm going to reel some of them off and you tell me if you feel a similar way. First one is a lot of people don't want to waste any time and they suffer from time anxiety. So people do things as quickly as they have to and as efficiently as possible so that they can reserve other time for more meaningful stuff. So a lot of people will try to optimize what they've got to do, whether it be their studies or work, and do it as quickly as possible. So if you've got 24 hours in a day, instead of having 8 hours to do all your work, you can spend maybe 4 hours doing it. So then you've got more time reserved to do things that you enjoy. So that could be things like spending time with your family, going for a run, exercising, doing things that really fill your cup. And I think that's been a massive motivator for me as to why I think I've developed a bit of an obsession with how to, hack productivity. But it also can be quite detrimental. We can talk about it later. But for you, do you think that rings true with yourself as well?
Yeah, well, when you think of VCE days in school and even your uni days as of recently, you always get told not to spam yourself at the desk and just constantly grind at the desk. You get encouraged to do your extracurricular activities, to be a socializer and to not be your hermit in your room, because often that doesn't reap the good rewards because you find yourself procrastinating, you find yourself not being productive with your time, and that is not optimizing your time. So I like that point you make about, 4 hours versus the 8 hours at your desk. And I found myself personally that was when I became a better studier, if we're linking this to a study analogy. In school, I would dedicate days on end to just sitting at my desk and I wasn't productive. It would take me ages to get my notes done. But, recently in university years, when I've got a bunch of other things on, I've got work, I also have to factor in the traveling to and from university, placements. We were also doing our podcast on the side. I felt like my balance and my relationship towards the studying, towards being productive, was more optimal because I had all those other things on the side, therefore forcing me to make my time more efficient.
And what you just mentioned there is a pretty good solution to productivity and that, developing a more healthy relationship with it. We'll circle back to it later because it's a very important point you brought. Another reason people have a negative association with it or an unhealthy relationship is that a lot of people tend to feel guilty when they don't achieve their targets. So they attach their happiness to their to-do list, meaning they have to make sure they've read every email, responded to every email, accomplished every task they set out for themselves.
Did their 10 pages of reading.
Email that specific person asking to meet up, just a myriad of things. And the thing is, people tend to have the inclination of making very ambitious to-do lists. And it's really fun actually writing out a to-do list because you get a bit of dopamine once you tick that off, right? And a lot of people can be quite hard on themselves because I'm certainly guilty of it. My to-do lists that I write for myself, they're usually quite long. And I only maybe get through, a handful of what I've initially set out to do.
And how does that make you feel?
Well, initially I started to realize that I started feeling like shit about it because I was attaching a lot of my happiness and my sense of accomplishment to getting through all those check boxes. But the more I realized over the last few years, I still get the stuff done that I need to get done when I have to get it done. So even if I don't get everything done on my to-do list, it's kind of been a mindset shift, which is it's very hard to get everything done. It's you're placing unrealistic expectations of yourself. And there's a bit of rigid thinking, which you attach there as well, which is I must and I need and I should. I need to complete all these tasks. It's not I want to. And I spoke about this whole idea of rigid thinking, but it's so important. And the thing is, when you place that I need, I should, and that necessity that you complete everything you have to, you place a lot of unnecessary pressure on yourself and you almost set yourself up for failure as well. Because even if you don't get through everything, if you have a healthy mindset to it, you say, okay, look, I didn't get everything I had to done. We'll work on the rest tomorrow. And you leave it there.
It is easier said than done though, especially when you are such a driven person and you have the mindset of wanting to be the best in your field or wanting to just be a high achiever. You struggle to actually sit with yourself when you're not ticking those 10 boxes. Even if you're only ticking those 8 out of 10 boxes, I know myself, I'm better now, but I used to, struggle with that as well, being a high achiever naturally. And Chris Williamson spoke about this on his podcast where he spoke about productivity, is that when it comes to the high achievers, something that they lack, an area where they are weak in, that let's just say the status quo normal person isn't weak in this area, is just having an off button. High achievers tend to maybe not have that off button. They think that they need to always be ticking those boxes, ticking the 10 out of 10 boxes, not going to sleep at night until it's all done. And that is detrimental. And I think sometimes, we love David Goggins. We love what he preaches. We love a lot of the mantras in which he encourages people to live by. But I think when it comes to a potential weakness in character, it's that weakness of not having an off button and therefore not having that balance and that ability to just sit back and relax and just chill with the potential discomfort of maybe not getting done everything you wanted to do in that day, and that's okay, and being comfortable with that.
And it's completely true. And where it becomes really pervasive is when your productivity, instead of it being in service of the goal, is the goal itself. And the problem there is that productivity addiction is based on a lot of reward systems as other addictions, right? So by ticking off that checkbox, you're getting that sense of dopamine, that dopamine release. And if you know that every time you're productive, you get an increase in your salary or you get some sort of, social rewards, you're going to be chasing that next big hit. And the thing is, that's what kind of leads to a lot of workaholics and their habits. They understand that if they do what they have to do, or they have to devote themselves almost in a dysfunctional way where they're spending so much time on these to-do lists and being productive, in the long term, they get some reward for it. And that's kind of what drives that cycle as well. But something to keep in mind there is that the productivity isn't now in service of the goal, but it's the goal itself. It's how do we optimize that productivity? And there's a few issues that can come there. And the thing is, I want to ask you this. How did you know, for example, when you had an unhealthy relationship with productivity? I want to see if it maps on with some of the research.
How did I know when I started to feel that it was unhealthy?
Yep.
When I probably started to just beat myself up internally about it. When I'd hit the head on the pillow at night, hit the head on the pillow, not physically, just going to sleep at night. I just wouldn't feel content. I'd have this distasteful sense of dissatisfaction inside of me internally. And recognizing that is step number one, because once you recognize that, you can then ask yourself, do I feel good feeling this way? And I didn't. I didn't like feeling that way. So what is my solution then? How do I respond to that? How do I react to that? I know that I felt that way, and I know that I felt that way because of, maybe not achieving everything I wanted to do in that day. So how am I going to respond to that? And I responded to that by just telling myself, it's okay. Why is it okay though? Why is it okay? And this is a point that I wanted to speak about, is that I started to realize that it is okay to not get everything done when you wanted to, because you cannot control life. Things happen. You will have plans. Things will come up, and you will have family things. You will have social things, work things, whatever it may be. You cannot control life. So stop trying to control life. Life will control you in its way. There will be curveballs. So once I recognized that, I was able to be at ease a lot more. Second point is, I also started to realize that everything that is important does get done. You're always able to get the things done when they're meant to get done. And that went for me during VCE years. That went for me during school years. Whenever there was assignments, I was lucky. I never had to make or ask for like an extension to an assignment, because I knew that if there was a deadline, I would do everything I can do within my ability to make sure it gets done. And yeah, there was a Sunday that, I might not have done as much as I wanted to do, but you find ways and you find the method in which you're able to sacrifice certain things in your life in order to get things done that are important. And if you're unable to, you still find a way. You're not going to die. There's always going to be a solution.
You're completely right there as well. And, I was going to circle back to it a bit later, but let's just talk about it now, which is the whole idea that the work always gets done. If you've got a deadline, you're going to meet it. And it reminds me of this time I was in Gold Coast, and I think I may have shared this story before, but I was in Gold Coast with a bunch of mates staying in what you would think is like this big bachelor pad in Broadbeach. We just come back from a night out, we have a jacuzzi, and we're just relaxing. We're a bit drunk, we're talking shit. And one of our good mates, Gabe, we start talking about uni, and we talk about how annoying is assignments, and he just says, he's very efficient with his words. He doesn't say much, but he's efficient. So he says, the work always gets done. The work always gets done.
It does.
And it's a simple statement, but it carried a lot of meaning, because I'm the sort of student that tends to submit things right before they're due. I submitted my thesis last year 3 minutes before it was due.
Fuck me.
I nearly needed a defib after, because I was on the verge of having a heart attack.
Get the green whistle out as well.
Yeah, I was quite stressed and overwhelmed. Yeah. And what I did realize is the whole notion of Parkinson's law, which is work will expand depending on the time you allocate to it. So we've spoken about this before, but if you give yourself a day to do that assignment, it'll take you that day. If you've got 3 months to do that assignment, you'll spend the 3 months doing that assignment. And sure, Parkinson's law is great because you can compress something that might take a long time into a small time window, especially when you're working with a lot of arousal. But at the same time, why productivity systems are good and they're helpful to an extent is that you can avoid those pitfalls where you need to be stressing out about submitting something in last minute. So for me, productivity is a massive work in progress because I aspire to be more productive and efficient. But at the same time, I understand that when something really needs to get done, I have the utmost faith and confidence, and this is just coming with a bit of life experience, that I'll get it done.
Yeah, and I think when talking about productivity, our conversations generally tend to circle back to truisms. You know, that notion of it'll get done, the work will get done, is one of those truisms that I like to live by. And I think most of you like to live by when thinking about being productive. It's just another truism, and it's a truism because it's true. In the name, funny that. But that's why I think just circling back to these random cliches can decompress you a lot and allow you to carry on and to crack on with your life and be a little bit more content with it as well. I also want to bring up the point of it's also fine if the work is a work in progress and things don't actually come to fruition according to the deadline that you might have had. And a nice example for this is if we think about Barcelona. For those of you that have been to Barcelona or know of the Sagrada Familia, the famous cathedral in Barcelona in Spain, that was created by artist Gaudi, Antonio Gaudi, I believe is his name. I'm not the biggest art historian, but I believe that's his name. Now, Mr. Gaudi, he went and set out to create the Sagrada Familia back in the early 1900s. And for those of you that have been to Barcelona, you will know that that thing has still been under construction and is still under construction for so many goddamn years. And it seems like it might not ever fully come to full construction. But the message here is that it is still beautiful. It is still respected and loved by so many people. It still attracts so many visitors, and it's only a work in progress. It's not a final product. So think about this in terms of your life. You are still a work in progress with whatever it is you're setting yourself out to do, the work you want to do, the tasks you want to do, the dreams that you are chasing. And there's beauty in that. It's about the journey. It's not always about the destination.
It's true. You can admire something before it's completed, I think is a take-home message there, right?
For sure.
And the thing is, just because something's completed, sure, it's great. You can marvel at it, but there's nothing stopping you from marveling at, a work in progress. And that doesn't just relate to your work or your projects. It's in relation to yourself, in how you're growing as a person. You might have goals for yourself spiritually, physically, emotionally, and mentally, but be sure to reward yourself mentally just by, chipping away at those goals.
Yeah.
So I find that especially with productivity as well, when it becomes a very pervasive cycle, you can lose sight of that. And other things you can lose sight of and recognize whether it's become an unhealthy habit in yourself is that you always seem to be busy, right? If your friends are asking, what are you doing tonight? Oh, I'm busy. I have to study. I have to do this. Because I'm guilty of that. You know, I'm guilty of that.
But you've been better at it.
I try to be. And another thing is, and this is a bit more of a subtle one, if I'm procrastinating, I'll watch a video at 2x speed. Because it's a bit subtle, but it makes
like
sense.
your lectures, for example.
I've always listened to lectures double speed because some of them are just really slow. But more like, let's say I'm procrastinating, I give myself a 10-minute break. If I want to watch like a 20-minute YouTube video, could be whatever, I'll just watch it on double speed because I think I'm doing something productive there. And a lot of that comes into an idea called productivity purgatory.
What does that mean?
Which is what our friend Chris, I wish he was our friend, Chris Williamson from Modern Wisdom coined it, which is the thing is when you do the things for fun and you want to do things that are meant to relax you or decompress, but you turn it into a productivity tool itself. So instead of going for that walk after your big study session or your work session for 20 minutes to decompress and relax and just switch off from the world, you're going for that 20-minute walk because Andrew Huberman told you that going for a 20-minute walk enhances productivity and focus. So you're doing all these side ventures in order to service your productivity, in service of your productivity. And that can become a really vicious cycle because everything you do that's meant to just step you away from the work, to step you away from the productivity is still in the back of your mind. And I think we can even say with our podcast ourselves, we'll go on our walk, right? Sometimes and we'll be like, oh, we're having a nice conversation. And we're like, okay, this could be a brilliant TikTok idea. This could be a great video to speak about. This could be a great episode. And sometimes it just requires myself or you to even be like, yeah, it is, but like, let's just enjoy it in the dialogue of our conversation.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of that. I'm guilty of that when with people, like that example you just bring up, when with you and with myself. The notion of feeling like I need to be doing something productive on my walk. Like, it's actually crazy. I actually cannot remember the last time, now that you bring it up, that I went on a walk without listening to a podcast, because I feel like I'm on a walk now for 20 to 30 minutes. Let's get 20 to 30 minutes of, some good quality information into my brain, a bit of osmosis of information, and far out. Like what world am I living in now where I need to feel the need to do that? When did walking not become a productive thing to do in itself? I need to start reminding myself that going for the walk, that is the thing that is productive. It's the walk. It doesn't need to be anything else. It's great if you want to listen to a podcast here and there, listen to music, use that time to call a friend. But let's just actually get back into normalizing doing the thing and allowing the thing to be productive in itself, because it is. Walking is productive for our health, our well-being, and when you do it, you decompress and you feel so much better after. And I know that sometimes I come back from a walk and I actually feel a little bit more hyperactive because maybe I have just spent that time trying to absorb a whole lot of information. And then because I've tried to absorb all that information, I get worried that maybe I didn't absorb it to the extent that I should have. So that walk has actually heightened my mood and not actually allowed me to decompress and relax. So the productive thing actually became unproductive.
Correct. And that's where you almost have to ask yourself to strip any expectations of something you want to do leisurely as something productive, right? Just enjoy the moment, right? Just do it because you want to do it. Don't feel like you need to accomplish anything on that walk. I mean, if you're going for a run 5-6 kilometers and there's a target goal there to reach 5-6 Ks, do it at like 4:30 pace, that's a different story. But sometimes the things that we do leisurely, it just doesn't necessarily need to be in service of our goals. And I think nowadays it's so hard to get away from that headspace. And I got to be honest with you, there's times where I just don't want to exercise, I don't want to gym. I feel like I just need to stay at my desk and do what I need to do. And sometimes what will get me going is that productivity purgatory, and it's not healthy, and I'm the first one to admit it, which is, okay, if I go play this futsal game with my mates, that means when I come back, I'm going to be way more hyper alert, I'll be more relaxed, it's going to actually aid my studies, and that's usually what ends up convincing me, rather than just go out and have fun with your friends because it's good for your mental health.
And it's just fun. The sport itself is fun.
Sport itself is fun. So I think that's something I've also tried to really think about. But
yeah,
someone's listening to this.
Yep.
They're relating to this. They're thinking, far out, I'm a bloody perfectionist. I want to optimize all my productivity systems. I have 37 to-do lists on different platforms. I have one where I write in a journal because it's aesthetic, and then I have one on the computer. But I realize I'm developing an unhealthy relationship with productivity. What do you do?
Do what I did.
Do what you did. Do what you did. Fair.
As in the least selfish way. Look, I say it because that was the best thing for me. That was the best thing for me in terms of developing a healthy relationship with productivity is, one, identifying the things that make me feel good, make me feel healthy, make me feel decompressed. For me, that is going on walks, that is being around my friends, that is going to the gym and working out, that is eating good foods. If I'm nailing those things, I'm already feeling alert, healthy, and then ready to crack on with the academic or productive things that are required of me later on. Because if you're not nailing those non-negotiables for you, then when you actually need to devote yourself to being productive, things are going to be a lot harder if you're not nailing the non-negotiables first. So nail your non-negotiables as number one. Second point is understand that everything gets done. The work will get done, as we've spoken about. You will never fail in terms of meeting a deadline or not getting done what you set out you want to do. Why? Because you will eventually do it if you really want to do it. If you don't want to do it, it won't get done. But if you know in your mind that this is something you truly want to do with all of your heart, it'll get done. Whether it is by the deadline or not by the deadline, the work will get done.
And something helpful there is that, especially with uni assignments for any students, you don't need to necessarily feel good before you start studying to get the work that you need to get done. Your feelings are your feelings, but your feelings will proceed or follow your actions. So if you don't feel like you want to go study, but then you go and study anyway, notice how your brain and your emotions tend to adapt. You'll feel a bit more at ease. You'll that the hardest part is just finding the activation energy. So that's something to keep in mind. For me personally, something that I've started doing, and I've tried to kind of zoom out from it and ask myself more on a psychological level, why is it that I have an unhealthy relationship with productivity? Number one is that I did to remedy that is actually defining what I find meaningful in my day-to-day and reminding myself of the top 5 regrets of the dying, which is I wish I hadn't spent so much time working. So that prompted me to think about what do I find meaningful in my week. That's seeing my girlfriend, that's seeing my friends, it's playing sport, it's exercising, it's learning new things that outside of studying, it's just doing a whole heap of things that involves other people. So friends, family, partner. And what I do from there is I also calculate how much time I spend in a week on things that are productive, whether it be uni, work, or other things, like could be the podcast even as well. And then I see where I've got free time, and then where I have free time, even if it's for an hour, I will make it a non-negotiable to fill it with things that I find meaningful and enjoyable. And making that a priority, because if you start making those things a priority, like you make your work a priority and your productivity systems a priority, guess what? We spoke about it before, but it's Parkinson's law. So you'll get everything done. And I distinctly remember being in year 12 and the vice principal of our school saying the best students who tend to do well every year, as you mentioned, are those who have extracurricular activities. And it's because when you have so much stuff going on for you and you have a balance, you actually don't have time to procrastinate. You don't have time to think about finding the energy to get the activation energy, because you just do it.
Yeah.
You think less, you do more. And that's been something that's really, really helpful.
Yeah.
And the last thing, and I promise I'll let you speak, Jeremy. I know you're dying,
okay.
but I want to get your opinion on this one as well. It's reconsidering my relationship with time. If I allocate 10 hours in a day to do something, I tend to remind myself, if I'm procrastinating on something, I try to remind myself why I'm doing it in the first place. So asking myself, why am I struggling to find this activation energy? But then also reminding myself, in my studies, I have a lot of stuff to do, and it's to become a psychologist. And then I ask myself, is this studying in line with my values? And in my values, it is, because I value hard work and I value becoming the best practitioner possible and knowing my theory. And I think that really helps as well.
Yeah, I like that one. It's drawing into line your traits and your characteristics and your values in terms of what you're doing with your day. So I think that's a nice point. A point that I was also going to say is, I don't know what the science is behind this. I don't know if there is scientific research behind this. I would say that there probably is. Keen to know if anyone is listening, but I think doing something creative, having a creative outlet, is awesome for optimizing your productivity. And for me, this was doing the podcast when we started it last year. This was, for me, the creative outlet, learning a new skill, putting my time into something that was, I wasn't worried about making money from it, because, when we're not making money from it. So it's just more of it's a hobby, it's a creative outlet, and it's learning something new. So I think by learning something new and having that creative outlet, when you come back to the things that are maybe a little bit more rigid, the productive things that require a little bit more mental energy, a little bit more taxing and strenuous mentally, you're better for it by having an outlet that you can just kind of decompress and not put pressure on yourself in terms of learning it, because you're able to just go at your own pace and you learn things along the way, and you get satisfaction from learning things along the way. And that's a happy process, and you're better for it.
And look, in the process, you're strengthening your brain, you're gaining new neural connections, you're offsetting your risk of Alzheimer's disease in the process. So it's only positive.
Exactly. So be creative, guys. So on that note, when thinking of productivity, when thinking of how you can be your most productive self and not having a relationship with it that is becoming unhealthy and you're becoming obsessed over productivity, ask yourself what the things are that you like to enjoy first and foremost. Prioritize those things, work out what your non-negotiables are, and that way you'll allow yourself to decompress. You'll be able to be mentally more happier and switched on when it comes to the things that might require a little bit more strenuous energy. And also just realize and remind yourself that the work will get done. If it's so important to you, the things will get done. And It's okay. You're only human. You cannot control your life, essentially. You can control your ability to respond to life situations, but you cannot control life itself. The world will do some wondrous things and throw curveballs at you. So be kind to yourself. Yeah, be kind to yourself, because, you know, David Goggins is a great person, but sometimes I feel like I can feel a little bit shit about myself when listening to him all that much, because I feel like ticking 9 out of 10 things in the day isn't good enough. But you know what? It is, because the things will get done, the work will get done when it's meant to.
Yeah, look, a kick up the bum is great, but a hug to the self is also really important. We're all human. You're not going to get through those to-do lists like as though you're Chat GPT. So be kind to yourself and realize works in progress can still be admired.
Absolutely. On that note, guys, thank you for listening. And if you've enjoyed, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. And it'd be awesome if you can also give us a nice little rating on the show if you are enjoying the content, so we have an idea of, what you are thinking about us along this journey. And if you feel like there's someone out there that can benefit from hearing this content, then by all means, it would be awesome to share that so that the message can get out to others. On that note, happy Tuesday and have a good week, everyone.
Sayonara.